You have been studying English for years, and still there are moments when someone asks you a simple question and your mind suddenly becomes empty. You know the words, you understand the grammar, you can recognize the sentence when someone else says it. But when it is your turn to speak, everything seems to disappear, and that can make you believe something painful about yourself. You may start thinking, maybe I am not talented enough. Maybe my English is still too weak. Maybe I need another course, another grammar book, another vocabulary list, another year of studying. But what if the problem is not that you do not know enough English? What if the real problem is that you have trained yourself to study English, but you have not trained yourself to produce English? There is a huge difference. Studying English can make you good at recognizing answers. Speaking English requires you to create answers in real time. Studying gives you knowledge. Speaking requires access. Studying asks, do you understand this? Speaking asks, can you use this now, under pressure, without preparing for 5 minutes? That is why you can know thousands of words and still struggle to say what you mean. That is why you can understand a movie and still freeze in a conversation. That is why you can score well on a test and still feel nervous when someone says, "So, tell me about yourself." Your English does not need to become perfect before you start speaking. Your brain needs to become familiar with speaking before speaking starts to feel natural. And that is what we are going to work on. Not collecting more information, not chasing perfection, not trying to sound impressive. We are going to train the part of your brain that turns ideas into English quickly, clearly, and confidently. Because fluency is not simply knowing more. Fluency is becoming faster at using what you already know. So if you have been studying for months or years, and you still hesitate, translate, overthink, or go blank, I want you to hear this clearly. Your problem may not be a lack of English. Your problem may be a lack of speaking training. You do not need to become a different person to become fluent. You need a different way of practicing. Lesson 1. Stop confusing knowledge with fluency. One of the biggest mistakes English learners make is believing that knowing English and speaking English are the same skill. They are connected, but they are not the same. You may know the present perfect. You may understand conditionals. You may know the difference between say and tell. You may have learned hundreds of phrasal verbs. You may recognize advanced vocabulary when you read it. All of that is useful, but none of it automatically guarantees that you can use those things naturally in a conversation. In conversation, nobody gives you 10 minutes to organize your grammar. You do not receive a vocabulary list before someone asks you a question. You have to understand, decide what you want to say, find the words, build the sentence, pronounce it, and continue listening at almost the same time. That is why speaking can feel difficult, even when your English level is good. Your brain is doing many things at once. The solution is not always to add more knowledge. Sometimes the solution is to make your existing knowledge easier to access. Imagine your brain is a library. You may have thousands of books inside it. The problem is not that the books are missing. The problem is that when you need one book, you cannot find it quickly enough. Fluency is partly about building faster pathways to the language you already know. This is why some learners with smaller vocabularies speak more confidently than learners with larger vocabularies. The first learner may know fewer words, but those words are active. They have been used hundreds of times. They are easy to reach. The second learner may know many sophisticated words, but most of them are passive. They are recognizable, but not ready for immediate use. You do not need every word in English. You need a reliable group of words, phrases, sentence patterns, and expressions that you can use without exhausting your brain. Ask yourself a simple question. When you study English, how often do you force yourself to produce it? Not repeat it after a teacher. Not choose the correct answer. Not underline the verb. Not recognize the meaning. Produce it. Can you explain something without reading? Can you tell a short story? Can you give your opinion? Can you describe your day? Can you answer an unexpected question? Can you speak for 1 minute without stopping every time you make a mistake? If most of your English practice is input, then your brain is becoming good at receiving English. That does not mean it is becoming equally good at producing English. You need both. Input teaches your brain what English looks and sounds like. Output teaches your brain how to retrieve and organize English under real conditions. So from today, stop judging your progress only by how much you understand. Start judging it by what you can produce. If you learn 5 new expressions, do not celebrate because you highlighted them in a notebook. Use them, build sentences with them, say them in different contexts, put them into a story. Ask yourself questions that force you to use them. You do not need to abandon studying completely. You need to stop treating studying as the final goal. The purpose of learning vocabulary is to use vocabulary. The purpose of learning grammar is to communicate ideas. The purpose of listening is not simply to understand other people. It is also to absorb patterns your own brain can later use. English is not a museum where you collect beautiful words and place them behind glass. It is a tool. Use it. The moment you stop asking, "How much English do I know?" and start asking, "How quickly can I use the English I know?" your entire learning process becomes more practical. And that is where real speaking progress begins. Lesson 2. Train sentence patterns, not isolated words. Many English learners spend years collecting individual words. They write long vocabulary lists. They memorize definitions. They translate words into their first language. They review those words again and again. Then they enter a conversation, remember the word they want, and still do not know how to build the sentence. Why? Because real speech is not produced one isolated word at a time. Your brain speaks in patterns. Think about phrases such as, "The reason I think that is," or "What I mean is," or "It depends on," or "I am not completely sure but," or "The main problem is." These are more powerful than isolated vocabulary because they give your brain a ready-made structure. Instead of building every sentence from zero, you begin with a pattern and complete it. For example, suppose someone asks, "Do you think social media is useful?" A learner who has memorized isolated words may search mentally for useful, communication, distraction, advantages, disadvantages, and then struggle to connect them. But a learner who has practiced sentence frames can begin immediately. I think it depends on how you use it. The main advantage is that it helps people stay connected. The problem is that it can become a distraction. From my experience, it is useful when notice what is happening. The brain is not inventing the architecture every time. It already has the structure. That saves mental energy, and fluency depends heavily on reducing unnecessary mental effort. Native and highly fluent speakers do this constantly. They use chunks, collocations, repeated expressions, and common sentence frames. They are not creating every sentence from individual grammar rules in real time. You should not be doing that either. Start building what I call a speaking bank, not a giant vocabulary bank. A speaking bank. Collect phrases that help you perform common communication tasks. You need phrases for giving opinions. Personally, I think, from my point of view, the way I see it, you need phrases for buying time. Let me think for a second. That is an interesting question. I have never thought about that before, but you need phrases for correcting yourself. Actually, let me say that differently. What I meant was, that is not exactly what I wanted to say. You need phrases for explaining. The easiest way to explain it is, basically what happens is, the reason for that is, you need phrases for comparing. The main difference is, compared with. On the other hand, you need phrases for uncertainty. I am not completely sure, but, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but. These expressions make you sound smoother, because they give your brain a bridge to the next idea. And here is the important part. Do not simply read them, train them until they become automatic. Choose one sentence frame and use it 10 different ways. Take "the reason is that." The reason I study English is that I want better opportunities. The reason I wake up early is that I work better in the morning. The reason I avoid that app is that it wastes too much time. The reason I like this city is that there is always something to do. The reason I was nervous is that I had never spoken in front of so many people. Now your brain is learning a reusable pattern. Tomorrow, when you need that structure, you will not have to build it from nothing. A fluent speaker is not necessarily someone who thinks faster in general. Often, they have simply automated more of the language. They have more ready-made building blocks. You can build those blocks intentionally. Your goal is not to impress yourself with how much vocabulary you have collected. Your goal is to become dangerous with simple English. I mean that in the best possible way. Become so comfortable with common words and patterns that you can express complex ideas with simple language. That is far more useful than knowing impressive words that disappear whenever you are nervous. Fluency is not a vocabulary competition. It is the ability to move from thought to language with less friction. Patterns reduce friction. Train them. Lesson 3. Stop translating and start connecting ideas directly to English. Many learners say, "I understand English, but when I speak, I have to translate first." That translation habit can become one of the biggest obstacles to faster speaking. Your brain has an idea. Then it expresses the idea in your first language. Then it searches for the English translation. Then it checks the grammar. Then it worries about pronunciation. Then, finally, you speak. Of course you are slow. You have created a 5-step process for something that needs to happen quickly. The goal is not to force yourself to think in English all day from the beginning. That advice can sound inspiring, but if your English is not yet automatic, it may feel impossible. Instead, train direct connections in small areas. Look at a cup and think, "Cup." Look at your phone and think, "I need to charge my phone." Walk into a room and describe what you are doing. "I am opening the window." "I am looking for my keys." "I need to reply to a message." "I am making tea." These sentences are simple on purpose. You are teaching your brain to connect real experiences directly to English. No translation step. Then move to thoughts. "I am tired." "I do not feel like working." "I need to finish this today." "I should call him later." "I forgot to send that email." "I am looking forward to the weekend." Again, simple. Do not try to become Shakespeare inside your head. You are training speed, not poetry. One powerful exercise is the 3-second response drill. Ask yourself a simple question and answer within 3 seconds. What did you eat today? What are you doing tomorrow? What is one thing you want to improve? What was the best part of your week? Do you prefer working alone or with other people? Your first answer does not need to be brilliant. It only needs to begin. This matters because many learners have trained themselves to wait for the perfect sentence before they start speaking. But conversation rewards movement. When you begin, your brain often finds the next words more easily. When you wait, anxiety grows. Another useful habit is to practice mini monologues. Choose something in your life and speak about it for 60 seconds. Your room, your work, your family routine, a movie, a difficult decision, a goal, a mistake you learned from. At first you will hesitate, you will repeat words, you will make grammatical mistakes. Good. That means you are finally training the skill that was weak. Do not interpret difficulty as failure. Difficulty is information. It shows you where the pathway is still slow. If you keep stopping to translate, simplify your message. This is one of the most important speaking skills you can develop. Say the idea with the English you have. You need to practice that deliberately. Choose 10 difficult words you often forget. Then explain each word without using it. If you cannot remember generous, say, a person who likes to give and help others. If you cannot remember frustrated, say, when you are annoyed because something is not working. This teaches your brain flexibility, and flexible speakers sound more fluent than perfectionists. The goal is not to eliminate your first language from your brain. Your first language is not the enemy. It is part of who you are. The goal is simply to stop depending on it for every English sentence. Build direct English pathways little by little. Describe, respond quickly, speak to yourself, explain around missing words, use simple language faster. The more often your brain experiences an idea going directly into English, the more normal that route becomes. At first, it feels artificial. Then it feels possible. Then it becomes familiar. And eventually, there are moments when you realize something surprising. You answered in English before you even had time to translate. That is what training looks like. Lesson 4. Build a speaking reflex through repetition. Some learners dislike repetition because it feels too basic. They want new vocabulary, new lessons, new techniques, new resources. But the brain becomes fast through repetition, not mindless repetition. Useful repetition. If you say a sentence once, you may understand it. If you say a useful pattern 50 times in different situations, your brain begins to own it. Think about your first language. You do not consciously remember learning phrases you use every day. You have heard and used them so many times that they come out automatically. That automatic quality is what English learners are trying to build. And you cannot build automaticity while constantly chasing new material. There is a difference between exposure and mastery. You may have been exposed to thousands of English expressions. How many have you mastered? Can you use them quickly, correctly enough, and naturally when you are nervous? That requires repetition. One method I want you to use is what I call controlled variation. Take one useful sentence and change one part at a time. I have been trying to improve my English. I have been trying to wake up earlier. I have been trying to spend less money. I have been trying to become more organized. I have been trying to exercise regularly. Now change the person. She has been trying to improve her English. They have been trying to save more money. He has been trying to find a better job. Without opening a grammar book, you are training grammar through use. This is powerful because your brain begins to recognize the pattern as a whole. Another exercise is story recycling. Tell the same story several times. Learners often think, but I already told that story. I need a new topic. No, tell it again. The first time, you struggle with the vocabulary. The second time, your structure becomes clearer. The third time, you speak faster. The fourth time, you start adding details. The fifth time, you can focus on pronunciation and expression because the content is no longer difficult. Take a simple story from your life. Maybe you missed a bus. Maybe you had a difficult first day at work. Maybe you met someone interesting. Maybe you traveled somewhere. Tell that story today. Tell it again tomorrow without reading. Tell it again 2 days later. Record yourself if you want a clear measurement. You will notice something. Your English becomes smoother. Not because your level magically changed in 2 days, but because the pathway became more familiar. Then take the structures from that story and use them elsewhere. I was on my way to. I did not realize that. At first I thought. The strange thing was, in the end, those expressions can become part of your speaking reflex. This is where repetition becomes active training. You are building reflexes, and reflexes matter because conversation is too fast for constant analysis. When someone asks, "How long have you been learning English?" you do not want your brain to open a grammar meeting. You want the response to arrive. "I have been learning English for about 3 years. Done." No panic. No translation. No internal lecture about present perfect continuous. That structure is available because you have used it many times. This is what you should want from grammar. Not the ability to explain every rule. The ability to use useful structures when you need them. So stop feeling guilty for repeating simple English. Simple English repeated deeply becomes powerful. Complicated English studied once becomes forgotten. Your brain does not reward novelty the way social media does. Your brain rewards repeated pathways. Every time you use the same useful pattern, the path becomes clearer. Every time you tell the same story, retrieval becomes faster. Every time you repeat a phrase in different contexts, it becomes easier to access. You are not going backward. You are making the language yours. Lesson 5. Train yourself to speak before you feel ready. One of the most dangerous beliefs in language learning is this: I will speak when I become confident. Usually, it works in the opposite direction. You become confident after you have spoken enough times to discover that you can survive imperfect conversations. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it is often a result. If you wait until you feel completely ready, you may keep waiting for years. Because there is always another word you do not know. Another grammar structure you could improve. Another pronunciation mistake you could fix. Another reason to delay. At some point, preparation becomes hiding, and you need to recognize when that is happening. The way out is not to wait until all fear disappears. The way out is to give your brain new evidence. Speak while slightly nervous. Answer even if your sentence is simple. Join the conversation even if your pronunciation is not perfect. Ask the question even if you are worried about the grammar. Each time you speak and nothing terrible happens, your brain updates its prediction. You begin to learn. I can do this, not perfectly, but successfully enough. You need small speaking risks. Do not start with a 1-hour debate if that terrifies you. Start with 30 seconds. Record a voice note to yourself. Answer one question out loud. Order something in English if you have the opportunity. Ask for information. Leave a short voice message. Join a speaking room and say one thing. Speak to a tutor for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. Confidence grows through evidence, and evidence comes from action. Here is another rule. Stop trying to feel calm before you speak. You can speak while nervous. You can speak while your heart is beating faster. You can speak while your hands feel uncomfortable. You can speak while your mind is telling you, do not make a mistake. You do not have to obey every anxious thought. Your goal is not emotional perfection. Your goal is communication. Remember what the other person actually wants. They want to understand you. That is all. Most people are not sitting there with a grammar checklist. They are listening for meaning. If you say, yesterday I go to the office, is it perfect English? No. Can people understand you? Yes. Then communicate first, improve later. This does not mean grammar does not matter. It means grammar should support communication, not prevent it. A common learner mistake is self-correction addiction. You start speaking, then you stop. No, sorry, wait. Then you restart, then you hear another possible mistake. Then you restart again. Soon the conversation feels painful. Try a different rule. During speaking practice, finish the thought first, correct later. If you say, she go to work every day, do not destroy the whole conversation. Continue. After the practice session, notice the mistake and train the correct version. She goes to work every day. This separates fluency practice from accuracy practice. Both matter, but if you try to maximize both at the exact same second, your brain can become overloaded. Sometimes you need to train flow. Sometimes you need to slow down and clean up errors. Do not confuse the two. You do not need permission to start speaking. You do not need a certificate. You do not need one more book. You do not need to become fearless. You need repetitions in real conditions. Speak before you feel ready. Readiness often arrives after you begin. Lesson 6. Stop trying to sound advanced and start trying to sound clear. A strange thing happens when learners reach the intermediate or advanced level. They sometimes become less willing to use simple English. They think, I should sound more intelligent now. I should use advanced vocabulary. I should make longer sentences. I should avoid basic words. And this pressure makes speaking harder. Let me tell you something important. Clear English is strong English. You do not become a powerful communicator by making every sentence complicated. You become powerful by making your meaning easy to understand. Some of the most effective speakers use surprisingly simple language. They choose the right word, not the fanciest word. They organize their ideas clearly. They pause instead of panicking. They use examples. They explain. They connect one thought to the next. That is communication. Many learners know enough English to express themselves, but they reject the words available to them because they are searching for a better word. That search creates silence. Suppose you want to say, the company implemented a comprehensive strategy to improve employee retention. Maybe you know those words. Fine. But if you do not say, the company created a clear plan to help more employees stay, your message survives. This is a skill. Learn to downgrade language without downgrading meaning. If you cannot remember purchase, say buy. If you cannot remember residence, say home. If you cannot remember approximately, say about. If you cannot remember nevertheless, say but. If you cannot remember consequently, say so. This is not childish English. This is intelligent flexibility. The most fluent person in the room is often not the person with the most impressive vocabulary. It is the person who can keep communicating when their first choice of words disappears. Another important skill is idea structure. If your thoughts are disorganized, even perfect grammar will not save you. Use simple structures. Opinion, reason, example. I think working from home is useful because it saves commuting time. For example, I used to spend almost 2 hours traveling every day. Past, problem, solution. I used to struggle with listening. The biggest problem was fast speech. Then I started listening to short clips repeatedly. Situation, action, result. I had an interview last week. I practiced common questions for 3 days. As a result, I felt much more prepared. These structures give your brain direction. You know what kind of sentence comes next. That reduces pressure. Also, stop trying to fill every silence. Pauses are not failure. A short pause can make you sound more controlled. When you need a moment, use a natural phrase. Let me think. That is a good question. I would say, the first thing that comes to mind is, then continue. There is a difference between pausing and freezing. Pausing is intentional. Freezing feels like losing control. Useful phrases help turn freezing into pausing. And when you make a mistake, do not make it dramatic. Correct it once and continue. I went there on Thursday. Sorry, Friday. And we had the meeting. Done. No apology speech. No embarrassment ceremony. Conversation is not an exam. Your listener is following the idea. Keep the idea alive. So simplify. Organize your ideas. Use the words you have. Pause when necessary. Explain when a word disappears. Keep moving. The moment you stop trying to prove how advanced your English is, you create more space to actually speak well. Lesson 7. Build a daily training system that forces your English to move. Now we come to the most important part. You can understand everything I have said and still make no progress if your daily routine does not change. Knowledge about fluency does not create fluency. Training creates fluency. So you need a system, not an unrealistic system that works for 3 days and then disappears. A simple system you can repeat. I want you to think in 3 parts: input, activation, and output. First, input. Spend a short period listening to or reading English that is slightly above your comfortable level, not 2 hours. Even 10 to 15 focused minutes can be useful. Choose material that contains language you may actually use. A conversation, an interview, a short podcast section, a useful article. While listening, do not collect 20 new words. Choose 3 to 5 useful phrases. Remember, we are not building a museum. We are building speaking tools. Second, activation. Take those phrases and make them personal. If you hear, I have been meaning to, create your own examples. I have been meaning to call my friend. I have been meaning to organize my desk. I have been meaning to start exercising again. Say them out loud. Change the tense. Change the subject. Use the pattern. Third, output. Speak for 5 to 10 minutes. No notes if possible. Use one topic. Tell a story. Give an opinion. Summarize what you learned. Explain a problem. Describe a goal. The important thing is that you force your brain to retrieve language. This daily routine can be 20 to 30 minutes. That is enough to create real change if you do it consistently. This is how serious learners improve. They do not say, I am terrible at speaking. They say, I notice I struggle to answer unexpected questions, so I am going to train that skill. Specific problem, specific practice. That is how progress becomes measurable. Give yourself 30 days of consistent speaking training. Not 30 days of perfect motivation. 30 days of showing up. Some days you will feel strong. Some days your English will feel terrible. That is normal. Performance changes from day to day. Training is what creates long-term improvement. Do not judge the entire journey based on one difficult conversation. You may speak beautifully on Tuesday and struggle on Wednesday. That does not mean you lost your English overnight. Maybe you were tired. Maybe the topic was unfamiliar. Maybe the other person spoke quickly. Maybe you were nervous. Look at trends, not moments. At the end of each week, ask, am I starting sentences faster? Am I translating less? Can I speak for longer? Do common phrases come more easily? Can I recover when I forget a word? Am I more comfortable making mistakes? These questions show whether your brain is becoming more efficient. And there is one final shift I want you to make. Stop treating English like a subject you are trying to finish. There is no final chapter where someone says, congratulations, you now know all English. Even native speakers discover new words. Even excellent speakers sometimes forget what they want to say. Even confident people make mistakes. Your goal is not completion. Your goal is capability. Can you connect? Can you explain? Can you ask? Can you respond? Can you work? Can you learn? Can you tell your story? Can you speak even when the sentence is not perfect? That is what matters. You already know more English than you are using. Maybe much more. The next stage of your journey is not about stuffing your brain with more and more information. It is about opening the door. Let the language move. Use what you know until it becomes easy to reach. Repeat useful patterns until they become familiar. Answer before you have time to overthink. Speak with mistakes and continue. Simplify when necessary. Train every day, and slowly, something changes. You stop feeling as though you are constructing English from pieces. You start responding. You stop translating every thought. You start connecting ideas directly to language. You stop searching desperately for perfect words. You start using the words that are available. You stop waiting for confidence. You start building it through action. One day, someone will ask you a question in English, and you will answer. Then, a few seconds later, you may realize something. You did not prepare. You did not translate. You did not mentally review a grammar rule. You simply spoke. That moment will not happen because you found one magical lesson. It will happen because you trained your brain repeatedly until English became more accessible. So do not ask yourself tonight, what else should I study? Ask a better question. What English do I already know that I have not trained myself to use? Start there. Take one phrase, one story, one question, one 5-minute speaking session. Start with the English you already have. Train it until it becomes yours. Because the distance between knowing English and speaking English is not always more knowledge. Sometimes it is repetition. Sometimes it is courage. Sometimes it is a simpler sentence. Sometimes it is the willingness to keep speaking after a mistake. And very often it is training. You already know enough to begin. Now teach your brain to use it